The following broadcast is intended for mature audiences. These are real people sharing very real, deeply personal experiences. This content may be considered triggering for others and for those who are sharing. The chat room is a privilege intended for discussions and sharing. You are not being asked to agree, but you are being asked to stay civil and refrain from personal attacks. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome back to Am I Mental, a weekly podcast where people share real stories about living life with mental health issues and how mental health can impact life. I'm your host, E. With us tonight, we have Oz.
What's up, Am I Mental fam?
And we have Sarah.
Hey, guys.
And I just found out a couple hours ago about a friend of mine passing away, so I'm not going to be sticking around for this episode. I am going to be in mourning for this. So Oz is going to go ahead and run with it. So Oz, all yours.
Hey, thanks, E. Hey, everybody. So tonight we have a friend of mine on who has one hell of a life story. And the title for today says it all. He's had a life of complete chaos, and he's brought it all together to find his calm and to find purpose. So tonight we have Paul with us. Paul, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what drives you to spread mental health awareness?
Man, like the short version of it, I would say, yeah, the thing that drives me is just to like bring hope to other people, because there's a lot of people that I don't even know if I'd like to call it mental health necessarily, as much as it is just kind of like a normal thing. I don't know a single person, like at least in my circle, that doesn't struggle with some sort of quote unquote mental health issues. You know, I think it's just the better term of it is life and how we navigate and how we deal with it. And some have an easier path than others, and some of us have a better compass than others. And you know, for me, I just really didn't have I had a really toxic upbringing. My mother died when I was 5 months old from domestic violence at the hands of my dad, who never seen a day of jail. And at the age of 5, I was, you know, taken away into state custody and spent, you know, I would say the next 30 years just basically struggling. And I can't think of any time in my life that hasn't been a struggle, you know. And I've made it out to, statistically, I have some statistics written down here that I can share with you guys later, but I'm not supposed to be here, you know. I would like to say a miracle child, you know. The fact that I made it out alive and not like hooked on hard drugs and in prison is kind of unheard of for somebody who lived the lifestyle that I did, you know, in and out of the system, and then growing up and just to a chaotic young adult where, you know, adrenaline and partying was kind of like my escape from my reality of having mental health issues that I didn't even discover until just a few years ago.
Yeah, it's hard to realize, or well, until we've learned to put a label on something, it's just life, right? And I think especially today, like today's all about labels, label everything. And I think in some ways it's a good thing because it helps us understand what's going on. And maybe for those who need a little bit more guidance than others, it gives us a direction to seek out that guidance. Right. But I'm with you. Like everybody has something going on. I was really interested in having you come on Am I Mental because you should, for all intents and purposes, not be the person you became. Right. I mean, maybe not even breathing today, right?
Not even, man. I mean, I have 3 brothers from my dad's side. Like my dad had 4 kids with 3 different women, my mother being one of them. And then I have another brother who's the younger than me, and he's in prison, for who knows how long. I don't even know when he gets a release date. And then I have two other brothers that he had, and they're struggling. We're all struggling, and it sucks to see those cycles and know that, like, statistically I shouldn't have made it, and hopefully my brothers will break that generational cycle either, and or as well. And yeah, man, it's crazy to think that I'm not, like, when I was a kid I felt like I was the only one. Like, man, I'd be in a room with 100 kids going through gnarly shit and feel all alone, and like there's nobody that can relate to you and nobody that can understand. And then when you grow up and you start talking to your boys or people, and you're like, this happened to me when I was a kid, and you hear stories come out that are just like so similar, and you're like, man, I was never alone. I was always near people who had that shit going on in their life.
Yeah,
And
and I think growing up with toxic masculinity, right? I mean, you and I grew up. In some ways, we have some similarities, but a lot of it is the stereotypical alpha male. I'll whoop your ass at the drop of, for just for the sake of it, and kind of cut your own path by force, just because that's kind of what life teaches you a little bit, right? But I think growing up like that, part of that whole culture is to you're left feeling like you're by yourself, because when you're in that, when you have that mindset, you're not going to go and talk about the things that you think about while you're by yourself at night about to go to
well,
sleep.
that too. And like growing up in the system, like and this is even now, like I was born in 1986, so I'm an 80s kid. And you would like to think a lot has changed with the way things have been ran in the past 20, 30 years, and as far as state care goes. I just went and spoke at a group home maybe 3 weeks ago. And the first question I just asked the kids. I was like, who here feels like they're all alone and you have nobody to talk to? And nobody that can relate to the things that you're going through. And like 95% of the kids, out of like, maybe 20 kids, they all raise their hands. And I'm looking around the room and I'm like, all right, guys, look around, look at each other. And you're not alone. Talk to each other about your things, because like that's growth comes in like being vulnerable. It's really hard to tell a kid to be vulnerable because you have these guards up. Kids are mean. The kids are super fucking mean. And
Oh
if you
yeah.
start sharing your stories with your peers, you think like there's going to be a lot of judgment. They might make fun of you. They might pick on you. They'll use it against you. But I don't necessarily think that's really the case when you're all going through something similar. And after I had mentioned that, one of the kids pulled me aside and he said, yo, we're not allowed to talk to each other about our issues and about our problems. We have to talk to a counselor once a week about it. And I'm like, man, it just broke my heart, because like the counselor more than likely learned all his shit out of a textbook. He learned psychology and sociology and shit. He doesn't know what it's like to be fucking molested or have your mother murdered or your dad kick the shit out of you. And majority of people who go through that kind of stuff, they're not going to go to college. They're not going to become a psychologist. There's very few out there who've been through it. And it made me really sad to see, like, man, it's been 30 years and nothing's fucking changed.
Well, I think a lot of it, they, probably think those are big issues for other kids to have to deal with. But, the whole school culture and culture when you're a kid really kind of from, just people constantly trying to mold you into what they want you to be, and the people around you, the kids have like one idea of what you're supposed to be like, and anything outside of that norm is a problem. So, I know when I was a kid, I was one of the poor kids in a rich area, and my mom was a drunk, and you sort of know that something's wrong with you or something's wrong with your life, but you can't quite identify what it is, so you just kind of walk around feeling unacceptable.
Yeah, and kids are hella mean. They're so mean. When I got out of group homes, I so I was released from state of California into my dad's custody after spending like about 8 years in the state care of California. And I immediately moved from California to Massachusetts. And when I got there, like this is my first taste at like being in the real world, like this is my first like, all right, I'm a teenager now. I'm like 13 years old or something, 14 years old, and I'm now like a normal kid, right? Well, I moved from California to Massachusetts, like right outside of Boston. And I'm like this little surfer kid with fucking blonde hair, blue eyes, muscles, tan, and all the chicks like we're all like, yo, who's this cute boy, And all the dudes are like, let's fucking pound this kid, And I was poor. I got picked, I got bullied like you wouldn't believe, man. I was so bullied. I couldn't believe like and it never really dawned on me because I had such a rough life, that I just thought, okay, this is just what life is, whatever. Like, I didn't really think of it as being bullied. I was just like, man, the world's fucked up. I don't know if I like it out here or not,
When you're young, you don't know the difference. You just think everything is how it's supposed to be.
Yeah, I mean,
I grew up getting my ass whipped by my dad like often, and that was just kind of what it was. And I was taught to like, oh, I earned that. That was my thing. And I didn't realize until probably until I got to my teens and I started hearing stories from other kids like, what do you mean your parents never hit you?
Yeah.
It's
the
reality is just like
I'll give you something to cry about. You know how many times I heard that, and it was like,
favorite.
oh boy,
I brought you into this world. I could take you out.
Yeah, children are to be seen and not heard and shit like that. And it's like, dude, what the fuck, man? Like, and that was terrifying too because like I recently have started having kids, and when I found out my wife was pregnant, I was like terrified because I didn't know if the reason my dad was so abusive was because he had a rough childhood or because he suffered from mental illness. And I was like, I was terrified to think, am I going to be this? Am I going to fucking be this kind of dad that I hate? That, like there was a point in my life where like I was going to kill this dude. Like I had every bit in me that I was going to fucking murder this man. And I'm like, now I'm scared if I'm going to become it. So I worked up the courage to call him. And I was like, hey, I call him George. His name's Paul. I'm a junior, but like, I don't know. I just call him George. So I was like, yo, George, like, tell me about your parents. Like, what were your mom and dad like? Well, oh, my mom was great. My dad was great. I had the best parents ever, and this and that. And then I got really scared. I'm like, damn, maybe it is mental illness that he struggled with, and addiction and alcoholism. So I just got super scared, and I don't know. And that's when I started really diving into like my own healing, because there was so much more dependent on it than just like, I've been on some kind of drug since I was 5 years old. As soon as I got put in a group home at 5 years old, the first thing they did was put me on Ritalin and everything in between, And then when I got into my teen years, I discovered weed, and I never took another prescription drug for my mental health ever again. I just smoked weed every day for like 25 years. And,
you found what worked for you.
It worked for me. Yeah. I mean, it served me for a really long time. And then when when my son was born, things just changed. It was like I have more of a purpose. And you can't block out with drugs and alcohol. You use it to block out negativity, right? At least for me, I was like, I don't like the way I'm feeling. I'm going to smoke some weed. I don't like the way I'm thinking. I'm going to smoke some weed. You can't, it doesn't pick and choose what's getting blocked out.
It's just a total disconnect.
Yeah.
It's a total disconnect. Yeah. So like I'd be smoking weed and I'm like robbing myself of these joyous moments with my kid because I'm high, and I'm like, all right, something's got to give,
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely want to cover your path to healing, but to kind of one of the points of this podcast is to help people, like we were talking about earlier, is to let people they're not alone. To learn that they're not alone. I'd like to kind of take a step back a little bit and talk about your early childhood. I listened to some podcasts you were on before, um, and your life story. It made me angry. I was anxious to hear what was going to happen. I got excited for you, and then just to hear how you persevered. And that's why I chose the title, Chaos to Calm, because your early life was super chaotic. So I'd like to take a step back a little bit and talk a little bit about that. What early life was like. You touched on it, how your mom passed away when you were very young, um, and you then uh, your was taken care of for a little while by your father, and then you kind of went into the system. And I know you're really passionate about the system, so I'd like to hear about your experiences. What going through the system was like for you. What you kind of experienced a little bit there, and then I'd also like to touch on, since you still go out there and you do outreach, like maybe hear a little bit about what you would do different in the system, how you would change the system if you could, and then maybe move on to your path to healing. What was
Um,
early childhood like for you?
Early childhood for me, it's hard to say, man. I'll just have to kind of give you the whole rundown, like to really understand like how it was. So my mother was one of nine. She had four brothers and four sisters. So when she passed away, in a sense, I gained like four moms and four dads. You know what I mean? I lost one, but I gained all these other ones because they were all
It's awesome.
really, really good people. Like
Mm-hmm.
everybody in my family on my mom's side is successful. They all have kids. I mean, there was like, I don't even know. The last time I counted, there's like 37 grandkids and like, and
Yeah.
like a whole bunch of great grandkids.
And
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 out
they
of
came
all of
from
those,
epic parents. From what I was listening to before, your grandparents were amazing,
yeah,
right?
my grandparents, that's what I was getting to. So my grandparents are
Yeah.
like the fucking catalyst of the family, man. Like, and they never gave up on me. You know what I mean? So anyways, so I gained all these moms and dads, but they're all my aunts and uncles. So I lived with my dad until I was 5 years old. And he was like a super drunk. He's a fucking stolen valor Marine. He got kicked out of the Marine Corps for being an alcoholic and abusive and super toxic. Like most of the people that I know, I've acquired all these friends in different branches of the military growing up, and like I feel like they all have one thing in common is that they fucking know how to party, and like they learn how to. It's almost like the Marine Corps teaches them
Yeah.
a few things, and drinking is one of them. And so to be kicked out of the Marine Corps for alcohol, it it says a lot about like what he was doing. He was stabbed in a bar
It's
fight
telling.
on like right outside of El Toro in like 1986, like right before I was born. And then that was like the final straw with them. So he got dishonorably discharged as a private, which is like, I don't want to say, this is from another Marine's mouth. So this isn't from me saying like this guy's a nobody, but if you're a private in the Marine Corps, like you're like a prospect in the Mongols or something. Like you're a
Yeah.
nobody yet. You know what I mean? You're just
You
fucking
haven't.
you're just getting your feet wet, and you have all the opportunity to become somebody. But at
Yeah.
that point, like he got kicked out before he made a name for himself. That was a good one, and he never moved up a rank or anything like that. And still to this day, he's a stolen valor. So he wears a Vietnam patch on his VFW jacket, hangs out in the
Wow.
post all the time, like, and it's fucking disgusting to me. I have friends that have fought for this country. I have friends that have died for this country. My grandfather was a staff sergeant in the Marine Corps. Did 16 years, fought World War II and Korea. Was just a real fucking he sacrificed a lot of his life for this country. So to see this guy just continue to like play this war hero is just a fucking makes my blood boil. But anyways, he got booted out of the Marine Corps. And somehow landed a killer job with McDonald. He worked for McDonnell Douglas and Boeing as I was a kid. Which if he would have
So
stuck
did
with
my dad.
those, like, oh really? It's wild. Yeah, if he would have stuck with those careers, he would have been, who even knows, where that could have taken him in life, what kind of life I could have had. But he chose alcohol over everything. And so when I was between the age 5 months old and 5 years old, um, it was just real toxic. Like some of my earliest memories are him just like completely like beating the fuck out of his girlfriends. Um, and I remember watching him and him telling me like, "Oh, she's just being bad. Like she's in trouble. She's getting a spanking, you know." But he's like dragging this chick up the stairs of an apartment complex and just like beat the fuck out of her. And in my head, you're a kid. You're like, "Oh, she's in trouble. She did something bad." These are like my childhood memories. And at
Grooming
the
you for a
age,
life of abuse.
yeah, man. And then so like when I was 5 years old, I told my grandparents, my grandmother, that my dad molested me. Um, and that was like the fucking straw that broke the camel's back. They had been trying to get custody of me, and they had it to where like he would just drop me off at the house and I'll be back in an hour or whatever. I'm gonna go grocery shopping, and they'd see him like a few weeks later or whatever. So it was like they had me more than he had me at that point. So it was all good. But when I had said that, when I told them that, um, they reached out to an attorney, and the attorney's like, "Hey, you got to notify the police. Like, if you want custody of him, you got to notify the police." Well, they did. They
No,
trusted him. They notified the police. And next thing I know, we're having a family get together. I had a big family. Even then, I had lots of cousins and stuff that I was super close with. And my grandparents had a pool in their yard. And that was like the hub. We'd all get together there. Well, fucking police show up at the house, and they want to talk to me. And well, they don't want to talk to me here. They want to talk to me down at the station. Man, that was it. They fucking took me into group homes, and I spent the next like 7.5, 8 years in group homes because the state of California, it's like prison, man. Like it's big business. There's big money on these kids. There's big money on every prescription that's wrote. There's big money on every bed that's filled. It's government money. Anytime the kid goes to a dentist, there's money. It's just all money, 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 money. And these people running these organizations and these state cares, they don't want to let kids go home to their families. I
yeah. So
had,
Yeah.
I, sorry, go ahead.
My ex-wife and I considered doing foster, and we were looking at it like, how could we afford this? Like, we made decent money, but we weren't sure. And when we saw how much the state will pay an individual to take kids in, it kind of blew our minds. And just seeing those numbers opened our eyes up to the amount of abuse that could be taking place. People just trying to get paychecks by
It's
bringing
body
kids in their
brokers,
house.
man. It's
yeah,
you get
Yeah,
so do you get like you probably get like $5,000 per kid in a foster home, and you could have like 3 to 4 kids.
yeah,
You know
per
what I
month.
mean?
Like
It's
it's
with like no credentials. Like I'm a certified foster parent. I went and took like a stupid ass class for a weekend, and they're like, "Okay, you can be a foster parent." I'm like, "Really?" Because I passed a background check and took your dumbass class. I'm like, "That's crazy." And then I
when you
found out
said,
all the. Go ahead, Sarah. What's up?
I was just saying, and we were listening to your other podcasts, and you had mentioned that your grandparents, who were, fully equipped and ready to take you and had raised these other 9 kids, they wanted them to take parenting classes, and there were all these delays with you being placed with them.
Dude, I mean, so I'd go to court once a month. I'd go to like a custody hearing, and I'd have to go sit in front of a judge at this big courthouse in LA, and like thinking, "Oh, I'm gonna get to go home this weekend. I'm gonna get to go home this weekend." And never, fucking never. I get to go home like on the weekends if I was a good kid, But I mean, I still to this day don't know why I had to spend my life in the system the way that I did. And I can't fucking wrap my head around it too much because it just pisses me off. And the only thing I could come to terms with is that it's made me the man that I am now. And I have like a very unique way of reaching youth that are going through hard times. And it just kind of gives it purpose, you know, because I couldn't, and I still don't understand why I spent as much time in state care. I think maybe for a while it was just the way the system was, and then the system created me into being like I became extremely violent. You know, I didn't know the first group home I was in, they put me in. It was called Orangewood Children's Home, and it's like, dude, there's hundreds of kids, you know, and I came from like a semi-abusive background, and they put me in this like melting pot of kids from all walks of abuse, you know, all these lines of abuse. And I just, dude, I knew how to fight. I was around violence since I was an infant. You know, my mother died from being beat up by my dad. It's when I was 5 months old. You know, I was there to see that. Whether or not I remember it as a child, it's in your head. You know, like that's what I knew. I knew violence. So if a kid picked on me, I'd fight, you know, and like if somebody did something I didn't like, I'd fight. If a staff member told me to go to my room, I fucking fight. And then I ended up like, it's like all I ever did. They'd labeled me as like this violent kid, and I'd get restrained and all this. And really, I feel like I just needed a fucking hug, man. Like they took me away from a loving family and threw me into just basically threw me to the fucking wolves.
Yeah, I mean, I learned like I grew up in an abusive household as well, and one of the things that I learned early on is because getting my ass whipped on a regular basis by my dad, I learned that fighting and violence that's what power is. He had power over me through violence because he would tell me to do something and I wouldn't listen. And my mom would say to do something, and I was a shit kid. I'll admit it, you know, and I wouldn't listen. But my dad whooped my ass. I for damn sure listened. So I learned that through violence, it's power. I can only imagine being in a home with hundreds of other kids with those similar experiences in the past. You know, so much violence. I'm sure in each individual life, everybody's learning violence is power. And when you're in a situation where you have no control, somebody tells you when to go to bed, somebody tells you when to go eat, somebody tells you to go to school, somebody's always telling you something. I can see where, not saying it's the right thing to do, but I can see how it could easily turn into I need to take back some sort of power. I need some sort of control. And I've learned violence is it. So that starts to create that violent monster. Well, at least for me, it started to create the violent monster within me because I grew up fighting. Like some of my closest friends now, they've talked about like, you know, oh yeah, in high school I got into a couple of fights. I was like, a couple of fights in high school. That was like, I mean, that was like a Monday and Tuesday for me, you know. So
Yeah.
it's, but it's, but they didn't grow up. They didn't grow up with violence. They grew up with love. They grew up with support, you know. And so
Yeah, and it's crazy because I
rough.
had both. You know, I had both. I had
Mm-hmm.
the love and the support, and then I had violence. And then, like, so once I got into group homes, I would, you know, I'd go home on the weekend. So I'd be in this crazy toxic environment of group homes where, I mean, they had this room in one group home. I was at this one group home for like, I think 4 or 5 years. It's the longest place I've ever lived in my entire life was this group home. I'm almost there. I think in this house I'm about to live here longer than I've lived anywhere in my life, which is pretty awesome to celebrate. But I'm also ready to fucking move. So I'm like, it's weird how it like breeds you into these patterns continue in your life. But they had this room they called the level room, and they like the way group homes are ran, they're like all on like points, and if you're a good boy you can go get
more
special
privileges
treatment.
and
Yeah, you
yeah.
get more privileges and shit, and it works. You know, I have friends that do it with their kids, you know, and stuff. When kids have behavior
We do.
problems, like sometimes you
Yeah.
need, yeah, you got to have incentives, you know, and I get it. Well, in the 4 years of living in this group home, or however long I was there, I think I made it in that they called the level room for 1 day. You know, like I was a I
Mhm.
was a bad kid. You know, I was all flight
It's
risk. I
more
was
than
always
once
running
though.
away. I was always fighting. Like, I mean, I couldn't, you know, not even imagine. I could never even count how many fights I've been in. You know,
Yeah.
and it's,
Yeah.
Oh,
you
real
know,
quick,
Well, it's
sometimes,
Kat was
yeah.
asking if there's more than one Orangewood. It sounds like she had some experience with Orangewood.
I don't think so. So Orangewood is in Orange County. The one I was in, there might be. The one I was in Orange County in the city of Orange, like uh off the 22 and the 55 freeway in that area. And it's like a big facility. It's like a hub, like where they do a lot of intakes and then they'll kind of spread kids out to where they have placement for them in state care. I didn't spend a whole lot of time there,
Was
maybe a
there
month or two.
was there a lot of fear for you going back to those places during the week after being with your grandparents on the weekends?
I never in my life remember being scared. I just don't know. I don't really have it in me to be scared. It's weird. I'm scared of like certain, like, I don't know. I just never had the fear receptors or whatever. I just never really been scared of anything like that. Like, there are things that scare me, like drowning and shit like that. But like, you know, as far as living in the system, I didn't have no fear. I felt like nobody could ever beat me worse than my dad did. So like, I just, no, I don't ever remember being scared. I remember feeling like completely alone, and I remember crying for my mom, like in bed, and no one would come fucking tuck me in or give me a hug or just tell me it'd be okay. I remember feeling like I had nobody, but I was never scared. I can't
yeah.
remember one
That
time in my life that I've been scared, you know?
I can't speak enough about the importance of like words of encouragement, positive reinforcement, like and just taking the time to instead of just berating a child for doing something wrong, try to get into their head and ask them why they did it. Understand them and have a conversation around it. But
And have empathy, man. Like these
empathy,
people,
yeah.
and I totally understand that. Like working in the system for long enough, like you'll become numb and you'll become cold to the shit because dude, it's fucking hard, man. Like when I work with youth, it's you almost have to turn it off because it's difficult, you know. And you bring the stuff home, and after a while of doing it, like you become numb, but. I feel like a lot of these people, I don't know if it was court appointed or whatever reasons they had to be there. Their hearts weren't into it, you know. Out of the hundreds of staff members that I had working with me, you know, I remember three of them that had an impact on me. And they were three people that you could tell had lived a life like I had lived. And I don't know
What
where
was
they
it?
are. What's that?
What so that what so if people want to make a difference and they're in that industry, these three people have the secret sauce, right? You have three people who stand out to you. What made them different than everybody else? That
Dude,
you can still probably
they
remember
were
their faces to
real.
this day.
You know, they were just real. They were just fucking real. That's it, man. They were just real. They weren't like playing by the books. Like this one dude, he was this black dude. His name was Maurice, and he would like take me on an outing and just like put on the fucking gangster rap and just like shoot the shit with me and talk to me about his life and how things were when he was a kid and dumb shit that he did. And
Treat you like a real
and
person.
yeah, treat me like a person, you know, like a little homie, like a little brother, like he just showed me love, you know, like you could tell he fucking cared. And this other dude, his name was George, you know, and he was from Orange County. I think he was from Huntington Beach, and he was just like tattooed and like, and he just gave a fuck, man. And then this other dude, his name was John, and You know, he would take me in he had a badass like 50s Ford pickup truck and would like cruise me around, and he had like a wolf sanctuary at his house where he would like take me and let me hang out with these wolves as a kid and like take me down to the beach and like they'd break the rules, you know what I mean? They would break the rules of the place that they work just to make an impact. Like they didn't give a fuck to conform to whatever the norm was of the system they were working in. Like
That has to
those were
be
the people that made the impact.
a hard line because there are so many kids, and it seems like in a lot of ways the only way to really handle the volume is with institutions, but you can't institutionalize the children themselves. You can't
Yeah,
you can't
I
make
imagine
them conform in that way because they're still people and you're raising them essentially. That has to be part of it.
Yeah, man, that's the thing. It's like they're not raising you. They're there to fucking tame you and like keep you pinned up and like wake up at 7, make your bed, brush your teeth, take a shower,
more like
eat
a product.
breakfast.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're like a fucking inmate. You know what I mean? Like for real, like you're an inmate.
For you in your situation, you were put there because of an abuse allegation. So there wasn't anything you were being punished for or anything that, nothing that the court had decided you had done wrong. You were just...
No, man, none of these kids are there. When you're a child, I mean, I was taken from my family when I was 5 years old. What can a 5-year-old do? A 5-year-old could go fucking shoot his little sister in the face and kill her. He didn't do anything wrong. You know what I mean?
It wasn't malice, right?
Yeah.
You know what? Yeah, he's an infant. Yeah. He's a child. He doesn't fucking know. They don't have any kind of idea of consequence, you know? And I was like, I don't even know how old I was, and I just now processed this trauma. I was in one of these group homes, and this kid pissed on me when I was asleep in my bed. It was like this was like my first experience with like, man, I can really hurt somebody. He peed on me when I was in my bed, and my dad was like this fucking redneck, so he'd always try to dress me up with like as a cowboy with like a bolo tie and like cowboy boots and flannel shirts and shit. And I'm like, so I had these cowboy boots, and I put the cowboy boots on, and they had a chrome tip on them. You know, they're like shiny little fancy decorative tips on them. And I went in the kid's room while he was in bed, and I like kicked his face in, you know, like a Reservoir Dogs like style, like just fucking stomped this kid's. I mutilated this kid's face, and they put me in a mental hospital, and deemed me like 5150, that I was now a crazy, super violent kid. My whole life, I lived with this guilt of like, how could I do that to somebody? You know, like.
You knew absolutely zero different, though. That was the life that you had lived up to that point.
Exactly. And that's what it came to, was like, we were two kids doing the only thing that we knew how to do, with no idea of consequence, with no idea of like what this might do to somebody for their life, how this might have scarred them. I just did the only thing I knew how. And I didn't process that trauma until like 6 months ago. You know what I mean? I carried that my whole fucking life. So
the straw that broke the camel's back. It's like something I talk about a lot. And everybody's limit is different, and how people act out with that is gonna be from individual to individual. But as a child, when you reach your breaking point and you don't have the ability to gauge the consequences of outcomes, like good or bad. Like often kids don't know if they do something that is foreign to them, that they could be rewarded in glorious ways. But they also don't know if they go and kick the shit out of some kid, that it can have lifelong consequences. It's pure reaction,
And in that system, in that environment, like, you can't be a fucking beta. You know what I mean? Like, because what happens if you become that? Then you're just like going to get walked all over by kids and staff and everything. So like,
well, but that's kind of the point. Like we said, you can't have kids in a prison environment. That's not how that's supposed to work. That's not how if the point of it is to, even prisons shouldn't really function that way. I mean, there are countries in the world who have incredibly successful prisons that actually rehabilitate people and teach them to, hold down jobs and be productive and manage their emotions. That's one of the things, like we were talking about labels earlier, that I hate about the mental health system, is that we think of it not only in terms of personal weakness, but in defection, when really it's just fucking life. And some people have been shown how to manage it effectively and others haven't. And the ones that haven't, we need to teach,
The mental health system's completely broken. They're
absolutely
not, they're the same people selling the creating the disease or selling their fucking cure, their prescriptions. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
all that taking prescription medicine does, which is a big part of the mental health industry, is just masks whatever the trauma is. There's very few, especially when you're a kid, there's very few outlets. And I try to wonder, like, if because kids aren't, like, they're not ready to mend, like they're not ready to deal with trauma, but
their brains are nowhere near fully developed. And there are, just to inject this, there are definitely neurochemical issues that can be helped with medication. We don't want to
for sure. I'm not downplaying it, but when you got 100 kids in a group home and 100 of them are on meds,
it's a method of control.
It's not statistically even possible.
Yeah, when you're using it to make everybody more pliable instead of individualize what's needed, it's a big difference.
Yeah,
and when you're using it to sedate the crowd, that's not right. But
especially in children, I would think there are very few situations, given that their brains aren't developed really at all, that could,
our brains aren't fully developed until we hit our 20s. And you're giving somebody when they're 5 years old, like you said, you were started when you were 5, like the possibility of shit going wrong, without and just doing it automatically off the cuff without like precise diagnosis. We know through a history of other people with the exact same things that this is a crutch that could be used until the child can walk on their own. But it's just like, okay, he's a kid. All kids have a lot of energy. I'm more worried about the kids that don't.
How do
energy.
you?
Let's give them meds to sedate them.
When you got a ratio of like 20 to 1, like 20 kids to 1 staff member who are all coming from trauma, and this is just me trying to rationalize it, is like, how else do you have like that environment without like complete chaos? It's like, you gotta sedate, you have to, and I get it, but it's like, it's not the answer, and it's just creating drug addicts. It's like, that's what it does. It just creates fucking little drug addicts because you become dependent on that and taught not to feel.
Talk about your recovery from that a little bit. What was your path like there?
Say that. Sorry. It's funny. We're on point. It's that you've been through a lot at this point. Your mom was murdered. Your dad has been violent and absent. You go into the system. Your grandparents have been fighting to bring you home, to give you the family that really you want, but the state says you can't have. You start to go through the system after a while. There has to be, you wouldn't be here today until, unless there was a point where you said something has to change. And I don't know if this was Sarah's question, but was there kind of that linchpin moment where you're like, I've been ultra violent, this has worked for me, but I can't be this ultra violent kid anymore. I need to do something different? Because you helped me out. You were offering to help me out before, Sarah and I out. Like, for those who are listening, Paul lives right next door to me. We had not fully moved into this house yet. Paul lived next door, stopped by, and was already offering to help us. And we're not even like officially the neighbor yet. So he is generous with his time. Right. This is not what you would think of as the ultra violent, like, borderline like action movie star kind of level violent childhood. Right. And now he's like, I feel like talking to Paul, like I could be having a super bad day And Paul is so chill and calm now. Like just being in Paul's space, you're gonna calm down.
And
Right?
watching you with your son is joyous.
Oh,
And
it
yeah.
is. He stopped by today. Like, so one of the things that Paul does, I don't want to steal any of his thunder, his stories. One of the things that Paul does, like Paul is super into motocross, and so he rides his dirt bike around, and he has his son on his dirt bike with him all the time, and that seems to be like his go-to, his son's joy, and like just to see his like little hair, his hair, his you can see you can see his son's eyes from like a mile away, and his hair going, you know, he's such an amazing father. And hearing that you had the fears, of like, I don't want to become who my father was. So how do you go from that ultra violent mentality, like kind of Lord of the Flies style shit, to when what was it that made you start to want to change? Was there a person, an event? Was there
Oh
a
man,
moment?
so when I got out of the state custody in California, I was like, I don't know, maybe 13 or 14, and I moved to the East Coast, and that's when things they went from bad to worse. I ended up back in state custody there, and I don't have to get too far on this, but I ended up in juvenile hall. I escaped from like a fucking maximum security detention center. I got out and I ran. I was on the run for quite a while. And then I turned myself in there. And I was looking at, I think I was like 15 by now. And I was looking at a 3-year sentence in a maximum security facility in Massachusetts. And with the facility I was in, I couldn't go outside. They had like a gym in the basement, and I could go like work out in this gym. And then it was mainly it was like a 23-hour lockdown facility. So I was in a cell 23 hours out of the day. I would get to go down into the basement and fucking work out, and you get to have your meals and whatever. Well, my dad finally said that he would, he basically didn't want me anymore, and relinquished custody to my grandparents, or actually to my uncle, who was going through a divorce. And so I actually went from from the detention center I was in. It was in Fall River, Massachusetts. So I went from there to like a barber shop to get a haircut, and like handcuffs and shackles. So like fucking handcuffs around my, like hooked to my waist, and then shackles on my ankles so you can't run. They got a haircut, and then they walked me all the way from
Actually, the
there.
shackles where you're getting cut. Like,
What's that? Yeah, I was in
they
the
kept you
shackles
like,
while I was getting a haircut. And then, so they
okay.
walked me, it was before 9/11, so they could walk me all the way to the terminal, and then cut me loose. And I was with the parole officer, and the parole officer walked me all the way there. And he uncuffed me, and he's like, hey, like, I just want you to know, like, you're not a bad kid. Like, this was the only way that we could keep you away from your abusive dad. And I had like some serious charges. Like I got a kid pulled a knife on me, and like I beat him up, and I took his knife, and he ended up being a Boston cop's son. And I got like a strong armed robbery charge for like fucking this kid up and stealing like his butterfly knife, which is like an illegal knife to carry. And
Yeah.
so like I had some serious charges against me, and the courts just ran with it in a way to keep me. And then I stole some stuff from a doctor's office. Anyways, so long story short, I fly out to California, and I am starting my freshman year of high school, and that's when my life like totally changed. Where I had structure, I had people who loved me, I had people who cared about me.
Who were
I
those
live with
people?
my
Who started?
grandparents.
Your
So
grandparents?
my
Okay.
uncle adopted me, like technically, and I got to give him credit, but like he was struggling with his own shit himself. He had just gone through a divorce. He's an alcoholic, like. But it
Life.
was like it was my dad. My dad's best friend was my uncle Don. So the only
Yep.
person that like was going to get custody of me was him. And
Yeah.
so he signed custody over to my Uncle Don, but my Uncle Don lived in a motorhome in my grandparents' driveway. He was there taking care of my grandfather who just had a knee surgery and blah, blah, blah. So now I'm 15 years old or 16, and I'm starting my freshman year of high school. And come, I come, I come from like this really toxic past where I'd been like for the last 10, 15, 10, 11 years, I'd been fighting for my life, like literally like fighting for my fucking life. I've been in like maximum security lockdowns by now. I've
Like the
been people
Gladiator
try to
Academy.
motherfucking, like the jails in Boston, the kids that are locked up in Boston are probably like 90% black. I'm a small little white kid. Like they're different genetics, man. Like not in like any kind of racist way at all. I love everybody, but these black kids are fucking big, man. They're stacked. They're doing push-ups. They're doing burpees. They're fucking gnarly. And I'm getting worked, and it's like sink or swim. So you got to fucking be tough. Like you got to be tough. And like they tried to fucking gang rape me in the shower and shit, and like getting away from that. So now I'm like going to like this, I'm in high school all of a sudden, you know what I mean? Like all of a sudden now I know like I'm all right, I'm in high school, and I just fucking made it through hell. And like everybody in my life, I feel like expected me to just be different and just be a normal kid and not have these behavioral problems that like, I don't know, it's hard to explain, but like
Well, you learned a
I
lot of
was
those
like,
behavioral problems is survival, right?
yeah,
And
exactly.
you're learning the survival instinct.
So now I'm in the real world, and it's my first time ever going to school, and public school was my freshman year of high school, man. I'd never been exposed to like any of that environment before, and
That'd be surreal.
and I'm a new kid in town, and I'm in Orange County. I'm in like the school I went to there's a lot of gang activity, and it was like it was in a there was like I was on four corners where I lived. That was like one corner went to this school, the other corner went to this school, and I was happened to be on the fucking poverty corner. It was either that or go
Yeah.
to Modern Day, which was a Catholic school, and I wasn't about that. So I went to this school that was like, it was a lot of gang activity, a lot of violence, and I wasn't one to fucking back down from a fight, So like I got kicked out of that school. I got kicked out of like 7 or 8 different high schools. Um, moved up from Orange County when I was like, now I'm just finished my sophomore year of high school. I'd been kicked out of 4 schools by now. And then my aunt and uncle, they had kids that were my age. My cousin Nick, I call these guys my brothers, Nick and Ned. Ned's who I did that one podcast with, and Nick is his younger brother. And me and Nick have been like in set.
What's Ned's podcast? Let's plug that real quick.
Oh
Because
man,
Ned
plug it.
is
It's called
Ned is the
Fatherhood
shit.
Field Notes. Rebel and Create
Okay.
Fatherhood Field Notes, and
Yep.
it's really good
You guys got to go
content,
check
man.
him out.
He's actually got a book here. He's written a few books. He's about to drop a children's book, and he's like super super passionate about fatherhood.
Shout out to him.
And
He's good at what he does for sure.
dude, he's killing it, man. I wish he believed in himself as much as I believe in him and other people do, man. He almost has like, I don't even want to say. He's fucking great. He's gonna do great things, man. He's gonna do really, really
Yep.
good things. But I don't think he gives himself enough credit because he is doing amazing. But I don't think any of us give us the credit that we deserve. So, anyways, I move up to. They live in a little town called Middletown, and it's like, I don't know, it's like 2 hours from here. It's in Lake County. It's like near Santa Rosa, I guess would be like the closest city. And I I really enjoyed it because I now finally had like, I always wanted siblings, When I was in group homes, I kind of skipped over this. I didn't, my dad kind of bailed. As soon as I got taken into custody, my dad split to the East Coast. And the next time I saw him, he had another son. And I was like, it was like bittersweet because I had always wanted a brother, you know, or a sister, or whatever. I just always wanted that family environment. I always wanted a mom. So I started calling this fucking total bitch or mom, you know, her name was Lisa. And she ended up being super toxic. And so I just always longed for like this family, you know what I mean? Like, and I
Yeah.
never really got it. So I finally had it. And me and Nick, like, dude, we ran amok, man. We were just party animals, dude. We lived up in this area where there was no cops. We could do what we wanted. Like, our poor parents, like,
It was like
we put
anarchy.
them,
Yeah.
yeah, we put them through hell, you know. Like, it just was really, really. We weren't great kids. We weren't bad kids, but we weren't great. I kind of stepped away from. I didn't get in many fights up there, maybe one or two. But I started drinking. That's when I like discovered alcohol, you know, and I really liked, I don't know, something about me and alcohol is just like, it's a lot of fun, man. I really like just like get like, I don't know, man, just getting fucking wild, you know. I just enjoy it. I still struggle with it now. Like, not like in an alcoholic sense, but
It's that
I had to hang that
permission to
hat up.
disconnect.
Yeah, and it's nice to like be the life of the party, you know, and like I was always kind of like a class clown, wanted to be the center of attention, and like I don't know, it's kind of weird for someone that maybe comes from me to like be so outgoing and very much an extrovert, you know, like I like people, I have quite a bit of friends, and I like helping people, but you know, when I discovered the party scene, it was like full throttle, you know, it was like it's on, you know, and my whole life I had been into extreme sports, you know, riding motocross and surfing and skateboarding and adrenaline was kind of like a drug for me for a long time. And then it
When you
came
never
to
really
like
had much of any kind of childhood, so that was sounds like your first ability to like actually play, and so you went
yeah,
for it.
exactly. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah. So my childhood was like the weekends, you know, and it's like Saturday, it's like a Saturday, you know what I mean? So Friday you're driving at night, you get picked up, you know, I would get on a shuttle and I'd get picked up from my grandparents and then I'd hang out, you know, Saturday and a little bit of Sunday and then Sunday I'd get shuttled back to the group home. So yeah, I never really had like a childhood. And then I just had freedom all of a sudden, you know, and girls and alcohol and partying and no cops living in the mountains and then I discovered cocaine and like really fucking like that. And then weed and I just kind of like
And without any of those self controls of childhood built in there.
yeah, exactly. And like I just I'm super thankful to get all that shit out of my system when I was a teenager because when I was like then into my 20s and 30s, my friends that I'm hanging with are like getting into that shit and I'm like I'm done with that, you know, like you know, I'm just like I don't want to party like that. I don't want to try new drugs. I don't, you know what I mean? I kind of got a lot of it out of my system.
Yeah.
Um, but I got bounced around a lot, so I, you know, I kind of wore out my welcome there at my aunts and uncles. Um, and then I got sent back down to Southern California, and then I moved out. When I was 17, I moved out and some dumbass rented me and like five or six of my friends a house and like they all graduated high school and they were like, all right, let's rent a house. And you know, and me and my cousin Garrett and you know a few close friends, we rented this house. And man, that's kind of when my life changed forever. I met my wife there at a Halloween party. She showed up with a couple of her girlfriends. She was in college with one of my roommates, Ryan, and he invited him over for a party, and I met my wife on Halloween. Shit, it's been almost 20 years now, and man, I owe everything to her. You know, like you know, if it wasn't for her, I don't know where I would be. I just she's like an angel, you know. Like I'm cheering up just thinking of like where my life would be, like all these people in my life that never gave up on me, you know. Like she's the one that never really gave up. Like she toughed it out when people in my life were like, dude, you're on your own, you burned that bridge. Like I put her through a lot of fucking hell. Like I I was a wild ass, man. I drank a fucking lot, like, and just do dumb shit, and so many times in our relationship, I've hurt her feelings from just getting fucked up and like making jokes that are offensive to her, or getting in bar fights that put her in danger, or waking up in jail and not knowing how I got there. Man, one time she had to pick me up at jail at 5 o'clock in the morning in Santa Ana and drive me from Santa Ana to Santa Barbara, which is like 3 or 4 hour drive for an 8 o'clock in the morning court date for being drunk in public in another county, like just shit like that. Like the fact that she's still with me, it's like she saw something in me that I'd never seen in myself, and I really owe like the credit to her for not giving up. It's
So
like,
is she? So it sounds like she's been one of the biggest positive influences in your life.
Stabilizing
The
influence, at least.
well, yeah, stabilizing
well,
for
it takes a
sure.
village. You know what I mean? It takes a village. I
Mhm.
have an Uncle Michael who was the youngest of the 9 kids of my grandmother. He's been like my biggest mentor. Um, he's an awesome dude. He's full of wisdom. He's full of love. Um, I learned a little bit of something from everybody. Abraham Lincoln said, "You never met a man you don't learn from." So I learned. I've been super receptive to people's wisdom, whether or not I take it right away or it comes later in life. But yeah, I mean, she's been my rock for sure. She's been the stability in my life that I never had.
So was
Um,
it was there something that she did, or kind of going back to what I was asking earlier, or was there a specific moment in your life where you decided I need to change? Was there uh, a moment that made you? Because it sounds like there's a gradual change. You began to get your your childhood, but was there something that happened or something specific?
well, like 7 years ago, I found my purpose. Like I started working with at-risk youth, and found my purpose there. So I kind of was like, okay, this is what I'm called to do. This is why everything started to make sense, in a certain way. Um, and then so I've been on and off with that. Like I had one of the kids I was working with got murdered, and another one got life in prison. And then a week or so later, another one died of a fucking overdose. And then I just thought that I was failing, I'm like, I'm failing these kids. So I stepped away from that for a while. And I think the turning point, like the final like turning point was having kids. Like when my son was born, before he was born, I started like, okay, I really gotta like hang up the hat. I stopped partying like, I don't know, maybe like 3 years ago. I stopped really like the party thing. Like I don't even know when the last time I got drunk was. It's been quite a while. Um, I got in a bar fight on my cousin's anniversary. So I like they invited me out for their anniversary, and I went out and shit hit the fan, and I got in a bar fight, and it turned into like a much bigger incident than it should have. It was totally in self-defense, but I don't know. That was the last time I got in a bar in any kind of physical altercation was about 3 years ago, which has been a kind of a good milestone. But I just quit going to bars, so that was like that turning point. Like I ruined someone's anniversary who was very close to me, and and anyway, so when I had kids, I started having like a lot of trauma come back. Like this is my son's 2; he'll be 2 in like a couple of weeks, and a lot of things that I suppressed, like these memories that had just been like suppressed memories. Like, for example, uh, I bent down. My son picked up a book of matches that somehow got left out, and I bent down to like pick him up, take him away from him, and I had like a super vivid memory of my dad holding me down and burning me with matches. And I'm like, oh wow, you know, like where did that come from? And that really like fucked me
Gosh.
up.
Yeah.
And then it started happening a lot. And it was like as soon as my son turned 5 months old, which was how old I was when my mother passed away, I started living like this comparative life to where all these moments of joy, um, like are
Highlighted what you
just
went through.
yeah, and like instead of like being proud, like look at what I'm providing for my son, I would be like, oh look, I didn't have this, you know. My wife's like, oh look how much he loves that we eat at the dinner table all together. And instead of being like, yeah, man, it's fucking awesome. Like we're eating dinner together. This is great. He loves it. Look at the community we have. This is what it's all about. We're breaking bread together. We have a family. I'm just like, I never had that, you know. I didn't have a fucking dad. And then I'd go on like
You
these
know,
snowballs where I would like be totally disassociated with what was going on right in front of me. Like I was just constantly robbing myself of joy,
they
either going out
say,
and smoking. What's that?
I was just going to say, they say that, you live a lot vicariously through your children. So maybe if you can
Dude,
think
a
of
hundred
his
percent.
upbringing as like a second childhood for you, getting to
That's
do all
kind
those
of
things that
that's
you
what
never
I
got to do.
that's where I'm at now, but it took like some serious fucking healing, and I'll get into that. Um and I got to be careful what I talk about here, but I
So that it wrecked
I
you for a while.
realized
Sorry.
that I got to change something. You know what I mean? Something's got to give. I cannot continue to do this. I'd say I was like 90% of the time like totally checked out and disassociated from the amazing life that I had or that I have right in front of me. And it was not like me ever to be this way, you know, never. Like I just it was really weird. It was very uncomfortable. I started feeling suicidal, like thinking there was no hope. Like, man, I had like these thoughts went through my head and they're like thinking about it now out loud. It's crazy, but like, you know, I would just think like my son, he's like 6 months old. I'm like, fuck, I could just go kill myself, you know, like go disappear in the woods and make it look like an accident. My wife is beautiful. She's smart. Somebody will fucking be a good dad to my son. He's not going to remember me. He's young enough. Like, you know what I mean? And these are the thoughts I'm having because I couldn't see. The only thing I knew as far as mental health was what I had gone through as a kid, you know? And
Yeah.
and I started doing my homework. I reached out to a therapist who I saw when I was a teenager, who was a fucking joke. I was paying like $160 an hour to talk about his alcoholism and his son's problems, and it was really like, I can't believe this guy's in
Who's
practice.
in
And
therapy? Yeah,
yeah,
like who?
exactly. No,
Like,
that's
the tough
exactly
thing with
like what I
therapists
felt. I was
is,
like, bro, I'm the therapist. You know what I mean? And that's for real.
yep,
I'm like, fuck, I'm the therapist. So I got rid of him, and then I have like I'm super resistant to like therapy. You know what I mean? Like I don't want to sit and talk to a fucking counselor or whatever. But anyways, I had to go. I had to
I'm the
go
same way.
down this.
It
I
took
had
me
to
a
go
long time
down
to
this
find
rabbit
somebody
hole.
I could talk to.
Yeah, and then I had a relapse with opiates. Um, Somebody gave me I struggled with pain pills. I got hooked on pain pills after a motocross accident when I was like in my mid 20s, and I was on the opiates like it was my early 20s. So then I was on opiates for like 5 years every day. And like 9 years ago, I quit cold turkey and didn't take nothing, dude. I'm like, I'm fucking around with this shit. And then somebody gave me a bottle of 100 Norcos. And I was like, oh, I'll just save these, you know, in case I hurt myself or whatever. And then I hurt my back and I took one and then I took another one. And then, you know how it goes.
Yep, yep,
100
yeah,
of
and
them
then
are
it's like
gone. And I'm like, what the fuck?
in the blink of an
So
eye.
then I went
Yep.
through that withdrawal, and I think that withdrawal was what finally did it for me, man. It's sad to say, but I'm like almost thankful for it because it was like, all right, dude, like something's got to change. So
Yeah.
I I had a friend of mine whose wife is a therapist, and we were talking one day, and I told him I was interested in plant medicine, and kind of told him about why I wanted to do it. And he's like, "Oh, my wife is actually a therapist, and that's what she specializes in." And I was
What do you
like,
mean
"Oh my,
plant medicine?
like,
Do you mean like cannabis, or are you talking about
Like herbal
mushrooms
remedies.
or
yeah, like mushrooms and
yeah?
fucking ayahuasca
Okay,
and
okay.
that kind of shit,
Yeah,
and
yeah. These are subjects we've talked about before on Am I Mental?
okay, cool.
So,
So
yep,
MDMA saved my fucking life. It saved my marriage. It saved, dude. I'm about to go there. Like, so
yeah,
Microdosing or how?
no, like a
What's the
hero
treatment?
dose. Like
Okay.
yeah.
I'll explain it. Um, and yeah, whatever. I don't give a fuck.
Yeah,
I
with
got to be
MDMA,
super
you let
vulnerable
down the
because
walls.
there's
Yeah,
someone out here that might just need this. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
I'm not gonna like sugarcoat this. It was fucking hard. It was gnarly. It was one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life is like reach out to somebody and be like, yo, I'm fucked up. I need help. Like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm having these thoughts. I'm checked out. And then I hired that therapist and fucking fired him because he was just weird. And, and then I reached out to my friend, and I was like, hey, would your wife be interested in, not working with me because I didn't want to go through that kind of experience with somebody that I knew who I'm gonna like see at a
yeah,
barbecue or
for sure.
something, you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah. Make it weird.
yeah, it could make it weird or just uncomfortable. And now that I've done it, like
Hmm.
I've kind of totally got rid of that mental block. Like, a
Hmm.
year ago I would not be having this conversation with my neighbor, no fucking way.
Yeah, well,
um
now you live your life out loud. You're like
I
because
have to. I have to, like so I reached out and then I met a therapist who was a girl and a woman, I should say. And I just started telling her what I was going through, like I have a child now, and ever since I had this kid, all this stuff was coming back, stuff that never bothered me before. I was having all these memories come back, all these feelings and all this shit that was like super fucking new to me. And I'm like, how are these memories coming back? And I need to make a change. And for the first time in my life, I had a therapist tell me, I know what you're going through and I understand. And I actually believed her. I had my whole life therapist tell me, I know what you're going through. I know what it's like. And I'm like, motherfucker, you don't have a goddamn clue what it's like, dude. I think I lost you, Austin.
oh
You're
yeah,
talking, but I
it's
can't
like
hear you.
you're yeah, it's like when you get a therapist and you're like, oh, I understand, but then it's like, okay, you read about it in a book. You haven't lived my life.
Yeah,
You haven't
exactly. I'm
lived
like,
this
bitch, you
experience.
don't know. You
Yeah,
don't fucking know. Oh, your mom was murdered in front of you when you were a kid. Oh, you fucking tried to get gang raped in a shower. Oh, you fucking been on drugs since you were five, bitch. You don't know a fucking thing of what I'm talking about. Well, I was
yeah.
telling her I wanted to change my life because of my son. And I'm dealing with all this stuff. And she's like, I know what you're going through. And, and, man, I told her what I wanted to do, and I said I've been doing my homework on all this medicine, and I really want to do this MDMA, and and it's a super gray area. Like it will be legal soon in California, or probably nationwide for therapeutic use. And she put me in touch with somebody who would guide me through that. It's almost like a ceremony, like a
Hmm.
kind of hard to
Kind of
explain.
like they
Like,
do with ayahuasca. Like
yeah,
it's
exactly. So
yeah, it's
it
not
was
you're not just taking it to get high. You're doing it for to get a medicinal experience out of it.
so the way MDMA works is it basically gets rid of that mental wall that you have where you're like, there's certain things that you want to talk about and you're just like, I fucking like you
Yeah,
can't get it
you're like, I
out. You know
can't.
what I mean?
Yeah, you
It's like
can't.
gave
There's a
me
wall.
diarrhea of the mouth. It was like, dude, once I
Hmm.
popped the cork, it was like fucking let's go. You know, it was not fun. It wasn't like, oh, let's pop some Molly and fucking dance. No, it was like it was very. So the first thing that I had to do is I had to do therapy for like 4 or 5 months before they would even consider me doing this medicine, and
Yeah.
I'm super thankful for that because that changed like my whole trajectory of what my intentions were when I first wanted to do it. Like I just wanted to talk about my past and like relive everything and like talk about all this shit. But as I went through therapy and by the time I had done the ceremony or the whatever you want to call it, the therapy session with the MDMA, I was, dude, I was like doing group meditations, seeing two therapists, joined a men's group, had a personal coach. Like it just evolved
Yeah.
into like a bigger healing process than uh than I had ever
You're,
anticipated. If you would have
you're,
told me
you're,
6 months ago or a year ago that I'd be meditating with fucking mala and like you know what I mean? Like doing that kind of stuff, I would have told you you're out of your fucking mind. I ain't meditating. You're crazy,
yeah.
like
The, these are all different. It sounds like what you've been doing is with each therapist in the men's group and the different avenues that you've taken to really get to know yourself better and understand yourself. You're like your layers of an onion. You're peeling things back until you get to the core of you, so that you can really get to work on you and not all the calluses you've built up, through
yeah,
the years.
exactly. So the way MDMA works, like at least for me, it's like almost like you have like this bird's eye view of everything in your life. And then you can like fucking laser focus on certain things. So when I started my journey in healing, I wanted to relive all my trauma. I want to talk about it all. And then it evolved into, and I probably got it written down right here in my notes. I just wanted to, sorry, I'm just reading real quick. I don't even need to read
While
this
you're
shit.
looking up your notes, let me go ahead and uh, and let everybody know. So we here at MI Mental don't condone nor we don't condone nor condemn the use of any experimental medications. We feel that you should seek out professional help to to seek the path, the healing that you need to do. We're not telling you to do this. This is simply a story of one individual and what it did for them.
So
I need to throw that disclaimer in there.
there's no way that you could do this kind of journey on your own. You're not going to take a dose of MDMA and do this solo in your bedroom. That's not going to happen. Maybe you might get some like enlightening out of it, but like no, it was more importantly was the work that I did to prepare for it and the work that I did after the integration
No, so it sounded like
into it.
the talk therapy and the groups did a lot of heavy lifting here.
Yeah, it did for sure. It did a lot of heavy lifting, and it allowed me to focus on what my intentions were. So then my intentions totally shifted from wanting to go relive all this trauma to now wanting to become more present with my son and stop letting my past rob me of my joy of the present, and to be more interactive with him instead of being checked out. And I'll tell you what, man, I did this first ceremony. I was fucking scared shitless. I didn't want to do it. Um, and I showed up. I mean, I was excited to do it, and I was also really scared. So I show up, and it's a beautiful setting. It's like in this very private room on a property up here in the mountains, and I had two guides, a guy and a girl, who were both very, very knowledgeable in plant-based medicine and also in psychedelic healing. And and they put you in a room, you have your intentions, they play some music, they give you um a heavy dose of MDMA, and you don't have any distractions, you're comfy. I spent a majority of the time with a blindfold on, or not a blindfold, but like an eye mask. And I just, for the first time in my life, I had done drugs to dive in instead of escape, and
They're doing
and
similar clinical work with ketamine. I had an experience with DMT years ago that was very similar. I felt like I got uh, an unbiased bird's eye view of my life for the first time ever, and it gave me an incredible bit of perspective on basically what I was screwing up at that point.
It gets you
yeah,
out
for
of the way
sure.
of yourself to think
Yeah.
about
And there
yourself. Yeah.
and there's other ways, like for people who have like a single trauma experience in their life that they're trying to work through. Like I worked through it. Like for me, I had like a lifetime of it. You know what I mean? It wasn't like, oh, I
Yeah.
got beat up once, or I was molested, or I was raped. It was like a fuckload of trauma. So it was like, to me, to process all of it, like I don't think I could. It would take years and years and years of therapy to
To
do, but
unpack. Yeah.
you can process that trauma through meditation, through different certain types of therapy, EMDR and shit like that. That stuff all works. But, for someone like myself, where I had just so much of it compiled, like I didn't, this is like the fucking fast track to healing. You know what I mean? So,
Well, there will be, I'm sure times down the line where you have to revisit a lot of it. I know there have been for
oh, for
me.
sure. Absolutely. And I'd never done MDMA before this, which is surprising. Um, and I'm thankful for that. But so anyways, I do this session, and the guides are there to they're not probing me for questions. They're just kind of like there for support, make sure that I'm okay. And I just start talking, man. I just start talking and processing all this shit in my life and things that I that I had gone through, and looking at it with a different life of just like, or a different light of just like so much gratitude and all. But for the first time in my life, I had like empathy towards my dad, and like trying to understand why he was the way he was, and and it was just really healing. Like, I smoked weed every day for like 20 years up until that night before I was the last time I smoked any pot. Like as soon as I got out of that journey, like that was it, it wasn't part of my life anymore, and
Give you the
I
ability to let
haven't
go.
had, dude, I think it's been like 4 months now. I'm not even really sure. It's been a while now since I did the first journey, and I haven't had one moment where I'm like comparing my son's life to mine in a negative way, and
You're
that
just
was a
able to
huge thing.
celebrate your son's life now
Yeah, and just
because
like
it's
be
you're
present,
present. You're
Yeah,
present.
and that was like amazing, It was like, wow, how could something, they say that like 70% of people who do this treatment that I do, they don't qualify for PTSD anymore. You don't meet the criteria to have PTSD anymore. To where like people who take SSRIs, it's like 7%,
Yeah.
and that
Yeah.
doesn't do any healing. It's just masking the symptoms. So
Yeah.
the fact that this is illegal is just to show you that you do 3 sessions and you're cured. Big Pharma doesn't want anything to do with that. We don't. That's a whole nother podcast. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
going through that, that was definitely the most impactful thing I've ever done for my mental health, was like doing this MDMA assisted therapy and really working on the roots of my trauma and the roots of what made me tick the way that I was, and it was like an instant change. And
Yeah,
there were some side
it's
effects that weren't so great. You
yeah,
know, afterwards, I started having really bad nightmares about my past. You know, things started to resurface, stuff that I hadn't remembered. They would come back to me in my dreams and shit like that.
do
And
you
I
feel
think a
you're
lot.
better prepared to do you feel like you were better prepared to deal with those? Do you think it helped you get to a place and you're coming back because you can deal with them? So
You got a
your
bad
mind is
connection.
no longer maybe locking them forward. Oh,
You're breaking
oh,
up. I don't even.
yeah, I'm breaking up. Sorry. The
That's okay.
I was saying, do I sound a little better now?
Yeah.
Hopefully. Yeah, I was saying, um, you know, do you feel like it maybe made it so that you were better prepared to deal with those memories coming back, through your dreams where your mind might have
Man,
locked them
it's
away
been
before
tough.
because you weren't.
So, like, I was having these nightmares, and I'm like, what the fuck? They were like terrible. Like, my wife would have to wake me up and be like, "Oh, you're screaming in your sleep. What the fuck?" You know, like. So one of the therapists recommended, like, hey, just maybe take there's a lot of correlation with quitting quitting cannabis and having like super vivid dreams and sometimes nightmares. And I wasn't ready to deal with them yet, so she recommended like taking a small amount of THC, like a gummy, before bed. Um, so I did that, and the nightmares went away. So
Mm-hmm.
I've continued to do that, and I think I'm like almost to a point where it's like, all right, I'm ready to start dealing with this stuff because your dreams. I had never so I they're telling you things. You know what I mean? Your dreams are
Yeah.
telling you stuff, you know, for a reason. And I wasn't ready. I was going through so much and healing in so many different ways that I wasn't quite ready to explore what the fuck my dreams are telling me. So I've been taking like a 10 milligram weed gummy before I go to bed.
Yeah.
And that's it. So I guess I can't say I've completely quit weed, but I've like pretty much got it out of my life, you know?
Well, it's how you're using it is different, though, right? Before it was an escape, you were trying to kind of desaturate life with cannabis, um, which is different than how you're using it now. Um,
Yeah, my
anything that you
have
use at
shifted.
excess, anything at excess can be a bad thing.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like
Like
what you
even
were trying to get rid of necessarily was the weed itself, but the way you were treating your life with that disconnect.
I mean, I was stoned.
exactly,
Like, I mean, uh,
you're more
I,
purposeful with it
bro,
now.
I would wake up in the morning and I'd take a bong load. You know what I mean? Like before I had coffee or
Yep.
anything, I'd wake up, take a bong hit, uh, go to work, smoke a bowl before my first job, finish my first job, smoke a bowl, go to my second job, smoke a fucking bowl before my second. I was stoned all day long, you
Oh,
know,
but
like.
I get like when I first met you, like a year ago or so, like your eyes were never straight bloodshot, and
Yeah,
you're a lot clearer now.
dude, and I'm
Not
thinking
taking away from
clear.
anybody who smokes every day, all day. Not judging you for it at all. I know a lot of people who function in that realm, and that's their thing.
It's
Cool,
crazy.
happy
I
for
know
you, live
people
your
who
best
are
life.
super
But
successful multimillionaires who smoke weed all day. But for me, it was like
yeah,
I was using it to disassociate from reality because my fucking reality, you know, it just didn't seem great to me. When all these years,
yeah.
it's really good. You know, I've had a wonderful
And
life.
now,
So
and
how
it sounds like now you're getting to a place where you understand your life better. You're healing. You're in a place where you're celebrating your child. You're where I only have to imagine a byproduct of all that is your marriage has got to be going great. The happy better version of you, you know. Um the what what is the difference in your quality of life and kind of where are you going from here? Because it sounds like
So
you've been figuring things out as you go, and you've been doing a pretty good job of it since you've started to take control. Instead of being reactive, it sounds like you've grown to be proactive, which is really a positive thing. What are your next steps from here?
So my marriage, that's one thing that's super important about this kind of healing, you know, if you're in a relationship. I feel like my wife's pregnant right now. We got a baby coming, you know, and just shit, it could be any day now. You know, the due date's
Yeah.
like the end of February, but you know how that goes. It could seriously be any day. And I've been on this path of like healing myself, you know, and I feel like I've been so focused on myself that I've like kind of forgotten a little bit about my wife's needs. And I have to keep reminding myself that like all this work is for my family, you know, it's not like a selfish me like trying to just heal me for me, you know, because if I didn't have any children, truth be told, I would just be doing the same program, you know, which worked for me. So I had to do me for a while, and unfortunately, I was at a time where my wife really needs me to be more present and stuff because she is pregnant. We have a 2 year old, and it's like a lot for her. So my relationship, like I said, man, she's my rock, and she's super supportive. But I haven't been like the husband that I probably could be, but I'm getting there. Um, my path right now is I own a plumbing business,
Hmm.
and I'm trying to hang the hat up on that and go full time back into my outreach, which is a program that takes kids from group homes and just like toxic environments. They could be living at home with their families and get them out into nature, get them out hiking, surfing, camping. You know, go to the skate park, do that sort of stuff. Once we get them
The
out of the
trade
group,
show. What about the
what's
trade
that?
show? So you listening to what you've done in the past podcast, you spoke about one of the goals you had was creating a trade school for those who are aging out of the system or still in the system. Is that still in the plan?
So ideally that would be like that's a long term goal, you know, like I would really like to do that. But right now that's a big endeavor, dude. Like to start an actual school, you know what I mean? Like that's like I'm just a one man dog and pony show right now. You know what I mean? I can do a lot
Yeah.
of work with just a van and a group of kids to get them out. And once they get out into nature and you get them out of that environment, the barriers come down and then some healing can begin to where
Yeah.
you get into to their lives and talk to them and do some real mending. And I've had, you know, tremendous impact on kids' lives doing that work. And when I stopped doing it, because I told you the losses that I had doing it, I thought I
Hmm.
was a failure and that I had
Yeah.
no business working with kids like this. They're fucking committing suicide, they're getting murdered, they're catching life sentences. What am I doing? And then you see the kids who are becoming successful and starting families and joining the military and making a name for themselves that I worked with who came from worse
Yeah.
childhoods than mine. So
Yeah.
it
It
was
makes
like
me
the
think of
wins.
it
Go
makes me
ahead.
think of like something E and I have talked about. E found the show 120 episodes ago or something like that. He's been doing this for a long time. I've only been here for a couple seasons, but um, there's a lot of sacrifice that goes into this. Is just a podcast, right? It's nothing compared to doing outreach. It's not. But I can't hold a candle to what you're doing and the sacrifice you make for kids that you don't know that you're trying out there to save. But one of the things that drives everybody here in the MI Mental family to keep going is there's going to be a lot of, unfortunately, and it's a sad fact, we're going to lose some people, and there are going to be some people who fall to the wayside who just want to disappear. What drives us is the one person that we can help. If we feel, I don't know about for you, but we feel if we can help just one person, then that's how we gauge our success. We don't gauge our success by the failures. because we want to win every single battle.
You can't save everybody, that's a fact. And I had to
can't.
swallow that pill. And, don't discredit what you're doing, man. Like a podcast is what got me on this path of healing. I listened to this dude's podcast. His name is Cody Alford, and I've since become friends with the guy. And he did a podcast where he's a retired Marine combat veteran, and like super decorated, got all kinds of credentials, and just was like a straight up killer, man. Like, and the shit that he had gone through in combat, I couldn't imagine. And he went on this path of healing with plant medicine and psychedelics, and it is what got my wheels turning on exploring this avenue of healing, and it's what saved my life, So like, you never know what one podcast is going to do, what that impact is going to do. I'm a firm believer in that, people's lives who are restored then can go on to restore other people's lives, and it's very
the
true.
Butterfly effect, right?
Like the ripple effect, it's like you just don't know what that one person is going to do. It's like, so don't discredit a podcast at all, because a podcast is why I'm here talking to you today and didn't fucking swallow a bullet 6 months ago, and since I listened to that dude's podcast, I joined up his men's group, which is called We Defy the Norm. You can check them out on Instagram. It's not even a men's group, actually. I take that back completely. It's just I don't even know, man. It's a tribe, dude. It's just a tribe of people who are all trying to better themselves, and it's been really good to be part of something like that, to where I'm not the only one struggling. We're all dealing with shit, and we all feed off of each other. Dude,
that's
it's very important.
Like when you make yourself an island, it's easy to get lost in the storm.
Dude, for sure, 100%. So podcasts are incredible, man. I've learned so much about podcasts and healing. And like, you want to learn about MDMA and MDMA therapy, go on Spotify and type it in. There's a millions of knowledge. You want to learn about psychedelic medicine, go on Spotify and type in plant medicine, psilocybin therapy, ayahuasca, ibogaine, like all that shit. The information's out there, and I'm a huge advocate for it, because I'm living proof that the proof's in the pudding, man. Like, you can I'm here, and I'm a better me than I was 6 months ago after starting this journey. And not even that I was like fucked off or anything. I've been successful for a long time. I've been running my business for a while, and from the outside, you'd look at Paul and think he's got it made. I'm always on vacation, traveling, surfing, riding motocross, doing pretty much whatever I want. But inside, I was like a broken human being, and I just don't feel that way anymore. I feel like I'm thriving, and I started sharing my story on my social media, and then start getting this feedback from people, how like I've made impacts on them, and thank you for sharing. And I almost have like this imposter syndrome, to where like I don't feel like I belong in that realm. I had a friend telling me that I was like a sensei, and I'm like, dude, I'm not at all that. And I'm just a fucking dude, and
it's when you go through some things, and you're able to share your story, and when people start to be able to learn from it, it's easy to think like, who am I to teach anybody, right? But I don't know about you, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners don't have faith in a higher power. I'm not religious, but I have a lot of faith, and I believe that the things that we're put through, and this kind of, I took a note here from the other podcast you've done. Like, you feel like everything you've gone through, you got to do something positive with it, or it's all for nothing. And I feel the same. I feel the same way. It's if I feel we're put through things, or we go through things in life. It's just my opinion, but we go through things in life because we are strong enough to endure them, so that we may come across somebody in our future who may not be strong enough to endure it on their own. And we can lend a strength and the wisdom that we've learned through our experiences to help them find their way through those dark times. Right. And it
Dude,
sounds like,
100%, man.
you know,
I mean, if you're going to go into
you've been doing it.
battle, if you're going to go into battle, right, and you got like a group of people lined up, like you got a fucking dude in a suit, you got some fucking beta soy boy lined up, or you got some like Spartan warrior who's like missing an eye and a couple fingers and is just ripped and scarred. Who are you gonna pick to go to battle with, man? I'm gonna pick that
Yeah.
Spartan. You know what I'm saying? And like
Yeah.
that's how I feel as I am myself. I mean, I'm not like I've never been to combat. I've never been to war, but I'm a warrior, and like if I'm not out there like trying to lead, other men to greatness, like what the fuck did I do? What did I go through all that for? It's like I have to make some sense of it, and the only way that I can find value out of my past is not, I mean, is a redo with my kids, and my son, but it's also like to be a light in the darkness for these kids, these young men and women who are going through the shit that I went through that people just can't relate, and it's very apparent. I find so much value in it to where it almost makes me hate my career because it doesn't bring me that kind of value. And so yeah, I'm buckled down. Sorry, I need to take a drink. I'm buckled down like 100% on restarting my outreach. I'm gonna be getting a van here soon. I got a hot rod in my garage that I'm gonna be selling and buying a van, which sounds crazy to me, but it is what it is, man. It's time for a new chapter in that life. That 41 Merc in my garage isn't serving anybody by sitting there just collecting dust, and
But the van could serve how many people at once,
15 at a time, baby.
There you go.
So that's where I'm at. What's up?
So I'd written down a couple of questions that I wanted to ask. And I figured I'd be able to fit them in somewhere during this podcast, and I have not. So
shoot, brother.
I'm just gonna shoehorn them in here. One of them is, I think everybody knows somebody who's been through the system, and a lot of us have empathy and want to help. And I found with a lot of the shit and traumas I've been through, the people who are trying to help fucking fail because they don't know how to do it. The heart is there, they just go about it wrong. Being through the system, and really understanding the mindset of those who've been through it. For those of us who encounter somebody who may be still in the system, or a younger person still in the system, or freshly out, what are some of the things we might want to keep in mind when trying to help them? Right? I know at the start of it, it's empathy. Yeah, it's empathy, not sympathy. There's a huge fucking difference. A lot of people, like my friends have described me as a man's man. I don't want anybody's fucking sympathy ever. Don't give it to me. I'll be insulted. Empathy, yeah, let's cry together, but don't fucking cry for me.
Yeah, for real.
But what are some of the things that we can keep in mind when we want to be mindful of the experiences of the people who are currently in the system or been through the system, when we want to try to help, or just be an ear?
Well, first of all, and I learned this recently just from talking to veterans. I would always say, I have trauma, and I would compare it. I'd be like, oh, I'm not a veteran. I don't have the same trauma, and trauma is trauma. Whether or not I was out stacking bodies on a battlefield or fighting for my life in a group home, it's trauma. You know what I mean? So the comparative shit, it's don't do that. It's it's all relative to the person. You might find somebody who was gang raped who it didn't bother them as much as the kid whose dad spanked him with the belt once. You know what I mean? It's just like our brains are all wired different. So I would say like the
For sure.
comparativeness that goes on with like trauma, and this is just something that I've learned recently. It's like trauma is trauma, whether or not what the circumstances were, and we're all affected by it differently. Number two, I would say fucking listen, just like sometimes just shut the fuck up and listen. You know what I mean? Like everybody wants to
Yeah.
try to fix everybody's problems, when sometimes it's just like all they need to do is just talk. They don't need you to tell them how to fix their life and what to do. They just want to talk. They just want to be heard, and then like in the system, it's like they got this thing called a side hug. You're not allowed to
Yeah.
like embrace a kid because it's deemed sexual or whatever. Fuck that shit. Give a hug,
Yeah.
man. Like a lot of these kids are getting restrained and strapped to beds, and like I've been through all that. It's like, man, when I was getting shot with Thorazine and strapped into a bed in a mental hospital and restrained, all I needed was a fucking hug. I didn't need I didn't need what I was getting. I needed just someone to give me a fucking hug. And
We need to care.
so
To
those two
actually
things,
show that
man,
they care.
yeah, just show that you care and listen and like just be receptive to what these kids are going through, even adults, man. Like it just doesn't have to be with kids. The more I start sharing my story and sharing the things I've gone through, like I always thought that I was somebody cut out to like help young men and young women, but like I've been helping people who are my age, people who are older, people who are going through gnarly shit. Fucking veterans are reaching out to me, dude. I'm like, I never would have thought myself with somebody who was like had any kind of wisdom to offer a decorated soldier, like that's, you know what I mean? But it's like, like trauma's trauma. It doesn't matter if they were out, you know, killing people in battle or fucking beat up by their dad. It's like it just doesn't matter. So you never know who you're gonna impact, but it's just listening.
Yeah. We covered what we can do as individuals to help those who are in the system and who may have gone through things. What if you think about you when you were younger, what what is a message that you'd like to share with the younger you who's still in the system, kids who are still in the system? Um, what ray of hope or what kind of advice would you like to provide them?
Oh man,
Or
that's a
can you
tough
give
question,
them?
dude. That's a
Yeah.
tough question because it's so hard to see anywhere beyond what's right in front of you when you're young. Even now, it's like,
But,
you know what I
yeah.
mean? Like,
Well,
you're
it's
gonna ask me where
survival,
I'm gonna
man.
be
It's
in a year.
survival.
It's tough. It's survival. I mean, I would just say empathy, like you're young and you feel like it's tough, man. It's a tough one for kids who are going through it to have them see like say it'll be all okay. Reality is it's not. It's not going to be okay. It's going to be hard as fuck. Like the statistics that are there for kids, like 60% of youth suicides are from fatherless homes. 90% of all homeless runaway children are from fatherless homes. 80% of rapists are motivated in displaced anger from fatherless homes. 71% of high school dropouts, fatherless homes. 85% of youth prisons grew up in fatherless homes. 75% of adolescents present in drug treatment centers are from fatherless homes. 5 times more likely to commit suicide, 30 times more likely to run away, 20 times more likely to have behavioral disorders, 14 times more likely to commit rape, 9 times more likely to drop out of school, 10 times more likely to abuse chemical substance, 9 times more likely to end up in a state operated institution, and 20 times more likely to end up in prison. How do you fucking tell a kid that it's going to be okay when those are the statistics stacked against them? I would just say, like, fucking, you're going to have to work way harder than the kid with the normal life because the odds are stacked against you because of the way society's designed. for kids that are growing up like this with the resources that are available. You're
That
just
just
going to
comes
have
back to
to.
the authenticity that you were saying was, the best thing that anyone did for you when you were in there. They were just real
Yeah.
with you.
Yeah,
When I
those
go
three
into a group
people.
home and I read these statistics, dude, you know what I mean? Or go into a group of kids and I read these statistics and I'm like, yo, this is you I'm reading about. You know what I mean? Like, this is you.
Yeah.
These are the numbers that you're going to have to defy the odds to fucking beat this because they're stacked against you. That's the truth. The truth is, these kids and people who are going through this are going to have to work way fucking harder or they're not going to make it. They're just not. And for me to sit there and say, "Oh, I wish I could tell a younger self that it's all going to be all good and just tough it out." That's just bullshit. That's a fucking lie, and it's not true. And the truth is that you're going to have to work extra hard. You're going to have to search for resources outside of what's available for you, and just like seek mentors, and you show me your friends, and I'll show you your future. You know what I mean? And it's a very true statement. If I didn't surround myself with people who are doing great things, I don't necessarily know where I would be today.
So I got a
Looks like
question.
E's back with us.
Yes, I'm back. So I
Yeah.
got a question. So would you say that even though the situation itself in your life, it may never be okay, at least you can be okay in a hard as fuck situation?
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely shaped me for where like that. I don't feel like there's anything that I'm gonna face right now that's harder than what I've already been through. Granted, like if my family had any kind of health issues or my kids had some sort of problems, that's stuff that I've never had to deal with. But like,
You've learned you're
I've,
resilient.
yeah, I'm resilient. And I've made it through fucking some gnarly things to where I'm like, I can handle just about anything someone throws at
I,
me.
And there and
I,
there there
I
was one
think
more
one of the
thing I
great
wanted.
things about you is that
Oh,
you've been hardened by life, and it you still have the ability. You've recently found through all the therapies and everything you've seen, you've now, even though hardened by life, you're able to see the beauty in it, and it's not in comparison, but it is just the beauty in itself. You know, the things that your wife have done for you, the the first things your child does, and beyond that, the successes of the people that you've been able to reach out to and help, and the hope that you see in the people who've reached out to you, right?
let me
So
let me touch on that, and then I want to hear what he had to say.
yeah.
Yeah, I feel like, and I discussed this with a group of kids the other day. I do believe that there's good and evil in this world, and I don't think that the evil in the world is going to waste its time on mediocre people. I feel like every kid that's growing up in a group home situation, they're just being chiseled in. It's like they're in a forge, and they're just being pounded and pounded and pounded and pounded and pounded and pounded and just fucking beat and beat and beat and dipped in fire and pulled out and pounded and pounded and pounded, and eventually they come out like a beautiful sword. And whether or not they use that sword for good or for bad is completely up to them. And I feel like the evil in this world attacks these young men and women more because they're destined to do great things. It's like coming back to saying, like, if you're going to pick someone to go to battle with, who are you going to pick? I'm picking that motherfucker who's been through it, who's gone through it, who's chiseled into this hard dude. And with these hard people, they have empathy because they've been through it, and they're also badass because there's nothing they can't overcome because of all the things that they've already achieved and been through. As a young age, like a lot of these kids will go through more trauma than like people in law enforcement, first responders, and combat veterans. Like, they just the shit that they go through is tremendous. And the younger they are to deal with that trauma, like, I waited till I was 36 to start battling it. If they could start young, right out of the system, like, that's amazing. And I just think that they're destined for great things and they just don't know it. The system is not designed to empower them. What did Eric have to say? Sorry.
Name drop. All right, so what it happens all the freaking time. I can't even tell you. So one thing I was going to say is to go back on when you said that you surrounded yourself with good people. There are so many studies out there about the power of you becoming the people that you surround yourself with. Like, if you want to be a millionaire, surround yourself with millionaires. If you want to be successful in whatever it is that you want to do, surround yourself with that. So there's a lot to say about when you said that. It's back to the science.
Yeah, for sure. And it's all about what are you filling yourself with? What kind of podcasts are you listening to? What kind of books are you reading? What kind of, it doesn't have to be just people. It's it's what are you fueling yourself with? And someone told me a long time ago, I don't even remember where I read it. But if you divide your life in thirds and you spend a third of your time with people who are on the same level as you, you spend a third of your time with people who are where you want to be, what you want to become. And then you spend a third of your time with people who are less fortunate with you and giving and being a steward to those people. And it just gives you like a real good comparison of what the Paul is that I want to be. Do I want to stay on the same level playing field as people who are where I'm at, which is fine. I don't. I want to be doing great things. I don't want to be a millionaire. I'd like to have $1 million, but I'm not. That's not my goal. My goal is to be the best me possible, and being the best me possible isn't going to come from hanging out with the same fucking people that I hung out with in high school.
Kat made a comment in there about you were talking about hard people, and she said you're not a hard person, you're compassionate and empathetic, and E said that you're strong, not hard, because hard breaks, strong can be bent. And I would absolutely agree with that, watching you over the last year. And I'm glad you came on tonight, and it kind of breaks my heart thinking that you were I've been having kind of a lot of struggles myself this year, and it's kind of breaks my heart a little bit that you've been over there dealing with all this, and we've been over here dealing with stuff, and so I'm glad to know that you're okay, you're kind of coming out of the other side of things.
I'm good. I've always been good, you know what I mean? But I man, there's a darkness inside of me that I am super thankful for, and that I'll never give up. And I had to learn how to channel it, for good. And if the shit hits the fan, I will 100% take a life to provide for my family or save my own. I'm okay with that.
Sure.
I'm not going to be a fucking serial killer, but, put me in the situation where I have to defend myself and see what happens, but I'm not out looking for trouble anymore. I used to go out and be that way. All right, let's push someone's buttons till they swing on me, and then let's go from there. And now I'm at this point where I'm like, I have this dark side, and it's okay. It's all right to have that darkness and that you have it's like I have a warrior inside of me, but it's okay that it's there. And for a while I struggled with it being like, man, I'm fucked up. I can't believe I'm capable of these things that I've done. I've done some really bad things, and it's all good. I've in my adult life, I've done bad things for good reasons, and I'm all right with it.
I personally never judge someone based on what they've done. I've judged them more on how they respond.
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody has the capability for anything. That whole there, but for the grace of God go I. It's all based on, your decisions and your environment and whatever. We all have infinite capability to be anybody else, except for the decisions that we make. And you're made up of your life experiences and what you do with that, right? So that childhood, that upbringing, you can't ever purge it out of you. It will never go away. But you
and
can
I wouldn't
learn
take
from
it
it.
back.
And right. Because and you learned a lot from that. It was shitty, it was awful. But it makes the rest of it so much better, because you can, I think, appreciate those moments with your kids better than a lot of people could. And that you talking about, you know, your cousin's podcast about how, you know, when Kim was pregnant and right after your first son was born, you know, seeing her and like just being present and wanting to give her that joy, and like the transition from you from when you were young and all of that horror to now being somebody who, you know, has kind of mastered your life in the way that you have your own business and you do this kids outreach. And yeah, the plumbing thing is not necessarily what you want to do, but you do it to provide for your family. And, you know, you have this beautiful little life with you and Kim, and you're just like all of us, you're a work in progress. You know, you're going where you want to go, but you've come so far.
The second I stop becoming a work in progress, I feel like I fail. You know, I have to constantly continue to work on myself, because I've, you know, and put myself in uncomfortable situations, and that's where the healing really is. And I wouldn't take back my childhood for anything. If you told me today, hey, well, I can flip the clock back 35 years and your mom will be alive and you can see what happens, I wouldn't do it. You know what I mean? I am who I am. For the first time in a long time, I love that person who I am, and I'm thankful for the trials and tribulations that I had to go through. I attract a certain crowd of people, and I like the people who I attract into my life. And I have a great judge of character, and I'm able to overcome a lot of obstacles that have been put in front of me because of the things that I've been to. And then on top of all of that, I'm able to help people who a majority of the world can't relate to. So I'm extremely thankful for all of that.
Yeah, it sounds like the things that used to drive you uncontrollably, you have taken control of and used them as a driver for good. And there's some beauty in that.
There's
Like
a lot of beauty
all
in that.
yeah,
I'm definitely working on it.
the angst and the chaos and the anger and the anxiety and everything you went through and you endured, you're able to harness that from something that was kind of ugly, that was really dark, and that was hard, and help turn that into beauty by what you do with kids, because you're now, because of everything that you've endured, you're now able to be a voice to kids that they'll listen to, that feel to them to be authentic. You know, like those three people out of everybody in your past that who you've come in contact with, you know, which are probably numerous, when you were going through the system. There are three people who stood out for you, and through everything, and being strong and making it through and choosing to live a next day. It's a huge theme here. Like today is celebrated because someday you made a decision to for there to be a tomorrow, right? And
Yeah.
you get to, you know, all your experiences will help you be the voice that will lead to somebody choosing to be here tomorrow, which is amazing.
And you're
Yeah,
a
for
testament.
sure.
For nothing. Yeah.
Go ahead, Sarah.
I was just going to say, and you're a testament to what, you know, putting in the emotional work can do. Because there are a lot of guys, you know, your age and our age who, you know, who
Hard for
even
me.
girls who, yeah, who don't want to have anything to do with it. They don't think they need it. They don't think they want it. They think it makes them weak. But
It's the hardest
to
thing
me,
I've ever done.
yeah, to me, the litmus
Yeah.
was, you know, you managed to work through so much of it that you got to a point where, you know, you could never forget, nobody ever could, that, you know, your dad murdered your mom, but to be able to work through it to a point where you can, you know, talk to him and tell him, you know, essentially, I don't want anything to do with you, but I forgive you, and you should go forgive yourself. It's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, after I did that first MDMA therapy I called my dad and I just was like, look, I forgive you, man. I don't want nothing to do with you. And I can't say like my mom died from domestic violence. He didn't like murder her in cold blood. He fucking beat her up and he hit her too hard and she died. It was like it was an accidental death. I would have loved to say that like he learned from that lesson, but he didn't. He continued to be abusive to like all the women in his life and his kids. But to call him a murderer, I just don't think is fair.
No, but he did. And
yeah,
I
my
think,
mom ain't around anymore because of him,
yeah.
and that's a fact. And I confronted him about it because the only people who knew was like him and her, and she's dead. So I asked him like, what the fuck, man? And he said, I never hit her harder than I did before. And I was like, damn, man, like it was like really hard to hear that, like extremely hard.
Yeah.
But again, like I wouldn't take it away. I am who I am now because of that. And I think that if I continue to put in the work and put myself in uncomfortable situations, and I'm like really growing as a man and a husband and a father and a mentor to people, like I know I'm capable of doing great things. And
well, everything you've done, sorry, good. Everything you've done about it, all of your reactions, all the work that you put in breeds wisdom, and the kids that you help and your kids and everyone around you gets the benefit of that.
And for what it's worth, when Oz got you booked, he was over the moon excited about having you on here.
That's awesome.
You have won him over.
Paul, you got no idea how big of a fan of you I am. I'm like, this dude is the shit.
Yeah, he was like fanboying in our group chat that we have for the podcast.
Not even gonna be shy about it. I was.
It's funny. Like I hear all these people tell me,
you're such a positive person.
Fuck, it's like 90% true. I have like this, like I guess I have a friend that just like termed it imposter syndrome, and I just feel like I hear all these people tell me these great things, like you're a great father, you're a great friend, you're a good man, and I often don't believe it, so I have to like put my ego aside and I part of my last journey, I've done 2 MDMA sessions, and one of the things my intentions was to believe all the things that people believe about me, because I just don't, I don't. I feel like, I feel like I'm not a great father, It's like I often feel like
nothing ever feels like it's enough.
Exactly. And
I have noticed that guys that don't feel like they're great fathers tend to be great fathers, and the guys that think they're great tend to be a little bit less than great. Just saying.
It's so funny you say that. I had a friend who we're not friends anymore for some certain reasons, but he had like 2 or 3 kids, and I was talking to him about his kids. I'm like, bro, how do you like being a dad? He's like, I love it. It's so easy. It's amazing. I absolutely love it. I'm good at it. Dude, and then check this out. I'm like, well, where are your kids? What are they up to? He's like, oh, my parents have custody of them. I'm like, fuck. You're not a father, bro.
It is easy. Ain't doing it.
Yeah, man, exactly. Like, this is the hardest thing I've ever done, man. It's awesome and it's rewarding, but man, it's so far from easy. It's tough because not only do you have to work on raising a little child, you got to work on yourself, and that's fucking hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if you don't constantly have bile rising up in your throat, you're not being a good dad.
Yeah, for sure. It is constantly second guessing yourself, hoping you're not raising a serial killer. Like you have an idea of what somebody's North Star of morals should be, and trying to instill that in somebody while trying to deal with all the bullshit life throws at you. Like, there ain't nothing easy about that.
Here's something that I learned a while back. It's like, I'm not just raising my son, I'm raising somebody's future husband, their future father, future grandfather, future leaders.
Yep.
Like, I've listened to a podcast, this dude, his name's Ryan Mickler, and he's got a podcast. I think it's The Art of Man or something like that is the name of it. But he had a guest on there, and they talked about, like, how do you make a difference in the world? And he said that, like, every man needs to have like 3 or 4 fucking awesome young men and raise them. And I'm like, man, that's so true. It's like the society that we live in is just so broken, dude. Like, it is so sad. Like, so many parents and fathers out there that want to be friends with their kids, and it's like, that's not what you're here to do, like so many parents
you can have
are like
fun with your kids, but you can't be their you can't be their buddy.
Well,
yeah, exactly. Like,
and as I've done with my kids, I have some adult kids and I have some younger kids. I tell them, it's like, look, I have to wear the dad hat first. I don't want to always wear the dad hat. We can be friends, we can have fun, but the moment I need to put that dad hat on, it's going right on, and it's not coming off anytime soon.
Yeah. How old are your kids?
So I have a 27-year-old, a 26-year-old, 21-year-old, 7-year-old, and a 5-year-old.
Damn. A 5-year-old?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
God said go forth and multiply, and I said challenge accepted.
Twice. You said it twice.
I
haven't met the older kids.
No, I mean in 2 sets. Like, you got them pretty much raised, and then you're like, yeah, I'll do it again.
Yep.
Yeah, I haven't met his older kids, but his younger kids are like stupid adorable. Like, they're going to get over on me with their adorableness. And I'm
awesome.
not even, and that's okay.
But you were talking about the Ryan Mickler podcast. Would it be The Respected Man?
I don't think that's the name of it.
Because that's what I found when I went looking for it.
Maybe that's what it is. I thought it was The Art of Man.
Yeah, we have no problems on shouting out other podcasts if they're good for people.
It's really good. I'd say just look him up. Ryan Mickler is his name. I listen to quite a few podcasts. Like, I work with my hands, so I can always kind of have something playing in my head, and I'm always listening to different podcasts. So I could be totally wrong.
I do the same.
I think The Art of Man is definitely a podcast. And maybe I'm just confused on who hosts it. But anyways, that was the point was, like, we need to raise better men, The men are going to, not to downplay women's role in this world, but there's a lot of toxic men out there who are raising toxic men. And it's like, generational trauma gets passed on, and
we need to raise better people.
For sure.
Better people. Like, and I'm not so concerned with gender roles, but it is we need to raise better people. Be a good person. Care about others. Be vulnerable so that you can heal. Be empathetic. Like, empathy has come up several times tonight. Be empathetic. How about the bare minimum basic? Just give a shit. How about
just
that?
Give a shit, and like how many kids are out there like serving the community? Like, there's so, like, just to pick up a piece of trash. I was always taught to leave people, places, and things better than how I got there. And that was mainly through my line of work. But like,
that's how my son.
Kids... Go ahead.
I was talking to somebody the other day about kind of my parenting philosophy. As a parent, you want your kid to have like all the joy and wonder in the world, but you need to make sure that they give it to those around them too.
I mean,
I think a lot of parents want to make their fucking kids' lives way too easy. Like it's okay to let them struggle and deal with things, because in the real world, they're not around. And now it's time to struggle, and they just don't know because they've been coddled and spoon-fed their whole life. It's like,
they have no resiliency.
They're soft, and they don't understand what it is like.
I've always
this
said,
may be unpopular with some of our fan base here, but I'm not all about that participation trophy life, because I personally think, it's just my opinion, if everybody gets a trophy for participating, you're going to raise some people who are not ready for adversity.
Well, you're not raising winners. You know what I mean? Like win and lose. Like I don't know, man. I'm new to parenting. My son's 2, but I have lots of nieces and nephews, and I work with and I haven't in a while, but in the past I've worked with a lot of youth, and like you don't get any value if everybody gets a trophy. You got to know what it's like to take a fucking loss. You know?
Absolutely, because life is going to deal you losses.
Okay. It's okay to take a loss. That's one of the big things. Like everyone's going to take an L, and it's okay as long as you walk away with the lesson. Why did I take that L? Okay, I can grow from this and move forward. Taking an L doesn't make you a worse person. You know?
There's like people who think Floyd Mayweather's the best boxer in the world because he's undefeated. He just ain't fighting the right people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's true.
He's selective about who he's fighting, and it's like he's not the greatest fighter in the world. There's plenty of people that'll fuck that guy up. Well, but he's got this I'm the best mentality, and it's like a lot of kids will have that. It's just because they haven't fought the right struggles yet. They'll lose eventually, and maybe they won't know how to deal with it.
So there were a couple of points I wanted to toss out there. One is, like, don't think about the participation trophy thing. It's like, if everything is X, whatever X represents, then nothing is X.
Yeah.
Because you can't have it that way. There was another part, but I forgot what I was going to say. So we'll just move on.
If everybody gets a trophy, the trophy is worth exactly nothing.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Oh, no, and also about how life will it will deliver you losses. And I mean, there are so many things out there, but one of my favorite quotes I've ever heard that has to deal with that comes from Vince Lombardi, one of the greatest coaches in NFL history. You learn a page from a victory. You learn a book from a defeat. And that means something. Yeah. And if you never lose, you never learn.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
For sure. Well, Paul, I want to thank you for coming on Am I Mental and sharing your story. It's been amazing. And I hope our listeners glean some bit of hope and some bit of knowledge now to approach people with empathy, and that shit sucks sometimes, and not everything is rainbows and green grass, but you put in the effort, you're vulnerable, start with yourself and admit that there's growth to be had, and you can make that growth happen and become the person you want to be if you put in the effort, right? It's today's kind of eye-opening. I've known a lot of people in this system. Not a lot. I've known a few people in the system, and none of them, they've always been guarded about their experiences, and I knew there were traumas involved, and tonight helped me understand a little bit better why. I never pressed, and I don't think it's appropriate to press anybody who's not ready. But, I think I've learned from you, be there, be real, be present, and
you never know, like, when you let your guard down, like how that's going to impact other people. Like when I started sharing what I was going through on social media, like my DMs just kind of blew up, and it was like overwhelming. I had people reaching out that I'd known my whole life who were like, I didn't know you went through any of this shit, and it's because I never shared. And I'm like, man, what kind of impact would I have made if I shared this sooner? Which I can't really have that, regret mentality. It's, but dude, just sharing your struggles. Like everybody wants to post their best day on social media. Nobody's out there posting their fails. It's like everybody wants to show their wins, and that's not real. That's not true. And if I didn't start sharing my losses and my struggles, like that doesn't do any good for anybody. That just makes people want to live this comparative lifestyle, like thinking that everybody's fucking got it made, It's like,
that's why I very rarely post on social media.
Yeah.
Kat says, thank you, Paul. Wishing you success with the youth support groups and the new addition to your family.
For sure. Thank you, Kat. If anybody wants to reach out, I guess Instagram's probably the best way to get a hold of me.
You could
And it's
also
Paul Newtbar,
you could always jump on our
PA.
Discord.
Yeah, we have
Yeah, I
Discord.
don't know what that is, but I can figure that out after. But my Instagram is Paul Newtbar, PaulNootBaar, double O's, double A's. And my Facebook is the same, but I'm not really on that too much.
And I was just gonna say that one thing. I mean, I didn't really get to listen to the episode. I will go back and listen to it, but it sounds to me like the whole thing was more about like life is going to give you shit, and you have a choice. You can either make a cesspit out of it, or you can make fertilizer of it.
You make a shit sandwich and fucking eat that thing.
Do that, yeah. Embrace
Paul's
the suck.
mentioned a few times, both here and on the podcast with his cousin, that he in everything that he went through, he really felt like if he didn't find, if he didn't do something positive with it, then it would be like he went through it for absolutely nothing and he couldn't stomach it.
Dude, I don't even know you, Paul, and I really like you. You're a good guy.
Well, man, let's maybe we get together one of these days and have a beer or a barbecue.
Hey, Austin.
There we go.
Hey, Austin, you get that organized? I'll be there.
Hey.
Yeah.
All right, we'll make it happen.
Because your property is infinitely nicer than mine. I'll just say that.
And Paul's is infinitely nicer than ours.
Yeah. Ours still needs a little bit of work.
Next door. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're still we're learning the country life where Paul understands it and he's mastered that shit.
Yeah, I
have not
we're just
mastered
trying not to
anything.
burn down.
I was raised in the country.
I haven't mastered a fucking thing yet, dude. I don't know if I'll ever be a master of anything.
All right, so you're in the Valley of Enlightenment when it comes to the Dunning-Kruger effect.
I'm not sure what that is.
So the Dunning-Kruger effect is that when you first learn of something, you don't know anything about it, you feel dumb. Then you learn just enough to know a bit about it, but not enough to know what you don't know, so you feel like you're a master of it, so you're on top of Mount Stupid. Then you learn what you don't know, and you fall into the trough of despair, and then you go up the Valley of Enlightenment, which is true mastery.
There we go.
We'll see. I'm not sure where I'm at. I'm exploring a lot of different avenues and really working on myself a lot lately. So I feel like the only thing I know for sure is that I don't fucking know anything, and that's an okay place to be.
That is the sign of true wisdom.
Leaves you so much. Exactly. That says there's so much room for you to grow.
Yeah.
And so the Paul of today could be a shadow in comparison to the Paul of next year.
And just to give you an idea of how bad...
I think that's the best any of us can hope, is to grow into that person that we truly wish to be.
You know what? I'll take my comment offline, and we'll leave it with that, Austin. That was awesome.
Oh, I wanted to know what you were going to say.
Oh, I said we'll do it offline.
Yeah, we'll continue to talk after we end the podcast. But Steve, why don't you go ahead and shut us down? I think we've had a great episode. Paul, I want to say thank you so much for sharing your story, sharing your wisdom, being vulnerable with us, teaching us something, and through that, and through those lessons, you've helped us all become better people. And I really hope that you can continue your work to help grow the at-risk youth that you reach out to and everybody around you. You're an amazing
dude. I
person,
much appreciate it. I appreciate what you guys are doing, and keep spreading awareness, because like everybody's dealing with something. I don't care who you are, everybody is dealing with something bigger than they feel like is bigger than themselves, and it's a lot of people are giving up, in the group, some of the groups I'm in, it's like every week there's been a suicide or a loss or an overdose or something, and it's people can't see beyond what's in front of them, man. And I would just say, like, to be vulnerable and reach out, and it's tough. It's a tough thing that we live in, It's like death is amongst us every day, especially when you work in this kind of environment, people who are struggling with mental illness or just trauma in general. And man, I would just reach out if anybody out there just needs someone to talk to. Like, I'm always available for a phone call or whatever, video chat. Anybody can hit me up.
Thanks,
You
Paul.
can reach out to Paul. You can reach out to any of the MI Mental fam. You can reach out to me also at mimental.net. And we're all here. We're all here for you.
Yeah.
I guess if there's a message to take away from the struggles today, other than being empathetic, give a shit, is you don't know what tomorrow holds. Hold your breath a little bit longer, and we can find out together. Because tomorrow
be vulnerable.
Be a hell of a lot.
Yeah, because there are
better
people
than
out
today.
there who do give a shit whether it feels like it right this moment or not.
For sure.
And
all right.
last thing too, if you have a story that you want to share, reach out to guests at mimental.net. One of us will respond. Even if you just need help or you just need someone to talk to. You know, you don't even have to be a guest. Just reach out to guests at mimental.net. We'll respond. Somebody will talk to you. And that said, I'm E.
Right.
I'm Moss.
I'm Sarah.
And Paul.
And we'll catch you
and
next
it's raining. Shit.